As he grew up, the old, worn-down house just stood there, mysterious on their block. When he was a kid, he and his friends would always play there and walk past it every single day on their way to school. He never thought much of the house. He never thought that one day it would be his property. You couldn't see himself as the kind of person that would buy this monument just to restore its former glory so that future generations would enjoy it. George Patchy Dunnett had always been a unique lad. Named Patchy because of a patch of white hair in his lush dark brown mane, he always set himself apart from his peers, seeking to do most things people his age didn't do. Having grown up in a humble village just 30 miles north of Edinburgh, Scotland, Patchy had been immersed in a rich history from an early age. Despite its small size, Cobbles offered some features that would delight any history enthusiast. There were 3 particular buildings that captured Patchy's attention as a young boy. The first building was a mystery to him. He could not establish who it belonged to or what its purpose was. The second building was a museum that was dedicated to Michael Bruce, a poet who lived in the 1700s. The final building was a small cottage that many believed had been deserted. However, they were about to be proven wrong. Patchy stumbled upon the truth of the cottage when he was around 8 years old. He and his closest friend had been playing hide and seek when they witnessed a man opening the cottage door and walking inside. Patchy and his friend's curiosity piqued, so they followed the man. At that moment, they discovered the truth about the cottage. The house looked very old and tired, with no one living in it for more than 50 years. Patchy said on YouTube, a wrecked car and some outdated tools were being stored there by the owner. Patchy evolved into a dedicated young man who established various revenue streams as a video editor and streamer. But as the years went by, he still felt the desire to purchase and upgrade the cottage. Patchy had always been an imaginative person. Growing up, he had always loved stories like Lord of the Rings and Narnia, and all of the fantasy stories he read as a child played a big part in who he grew into as an adult. He always traveled through mythical landscapes inhabited by fantastical creatures in these tales, hoping to one day lead such a life. Patchy understood he would have to create his own dream in the actual world because reality was less exciting than the realms in those books. I thought it would be nice to turn it into a proper house, something to call mine, Patchy shared. With that in mind, he began to implement his plan and eventually accumulated well over $195,000, thanks to his profession as a content creator and the help of his family. He approached the cottage's owner, with whom he had previously discussed purchasing the property, as the year came to a conclusion and worked out the financial details. Now all he had to do was restore it. It cost Patchy $67,000 just to make the purchase, with the rest left over to deal with all the hardship that would follow. After the previous owner took all his stuff out, what he left me with was a house whose floor needed sorting. The walls were in very rough condition, and the house as a whole was damp. The ground floor was also mud and dirt, a testament to how old the place was, and the stairs and sliding door would need replacement. Patchy started working right away. As there was no foundation for the cottage, the first step was to construct one. By removing the stairs and doors, Patchy began work on the foundation with the assistance of a builder. The chimney was also rebuilt, the bricks and cement were replaced, and a new brick stack was created for the bedroom windows, which were near collapse. Similar work was done upstairs, including bolstering the health of the house's internal walls, raising the ceiling a little bit, and pouring concrete onto the floor downstairs. The building was subsequently insulated by Patchy. The following phase of the project involved scientific scrutiny, which Patchy characterized as a real agony. When the builder saw the roof wasn't in great shape, he demanded extra money. However, it didn't end there. After sorting out the roof, including installing a new scaffolding, Patchy installed roof windows into the building, which blessed the house with natural light. His electrician had already completed the first round of wiring and the installation process was almost complete. The stonework outside saw a complete overhaul before Patchy and his team installed plasterboards inside to make the place look cleaner. As time flew by, the house was slowly taking shape. Patchy brought in a plumbing team to work on the bathroom and kitchen. He also bought a bespoke staircase that his team installed. With his mom, he painted the house as a way to hang out with her, as they hadn't been spending much time since he started the project. He also installed external lights and brought a local blacksmith to give the house some final touches. Lastly, he invited his dad to help lay the outside of the house with cobblestones, which was in homage to his village's name. After more than a year of renovations, Patchy finally moved into his new house. As someone who was a part of each step of the renovations, he was more than happy with how everything turned out. The oak floors matched the bespoke staircase with natural light firing through the house's many windows. Patchy also kept a few framed photos of the house before the renovations for any visitor who might wonder what it looked like. Although he'd built a wonderful home, what he decided to do with it is what shocked many in his village. Patchy posted his story online, sharing each bit of the renovation process, the costs, and the before and after photos. Given how rich his locale is with history, many people looking to visit his village have asked if they can stay in his house while they spend time touring cobbles. Patchy has opened up his home to a few travelers, some from well-to-do backgrounds, who have paid huge sums to sleep under his roof, even if it's for a night. So why not turn his home into a bed and breakfast? As it turns out, Patchy loves what he's done with the place, so much so that he's made it his home. Although he may welcome a few fans from time to time, the tiny cottage is his everything, where he will make countless memories. In the spirit of preserving history, our next protagonist accidentally bid on the wrong house, ending up with a century-old mansion that would change their lives. Ken and Annie had been dating for 5 years before they decided to tie the knot and start a life together. Adventurers at heart, the two met on a ski trip in northern Europe, culminating in a lovely friendship. They would go on several trips together, backpacking across Asia and Europe. By the end of their journey, it was clear that they were meant to be with each other. Ken asked Annie to marry him on a beautiful night under the famed Northern Lights in Northumberland, England. Annie was more than happy to say yes, seeing that Ken was the love of her life and soulmate. But although the two were happy to be engaged, they feared what was to come next. They had always talked about raising a big family in a beautiful home that came with a front and backyard and a driveway. The prospect of starting a family was scary for Ken and Annie because although they were both employed, working in fields they loved, they didn't have a house big enough to support a family. They lived in a small apartment in Scotland, a studio apartment that they always talked about moving out of. Now that they were getting married, the two knew it was now or never. Ken and Annie began their search for a place they could call home. They traveled all over the country, finding several houses that fit the exact description of their dream home. But although these houses were very well made, with well-kept lawns as green as a football field, fruit-bearing fruits, and safe neighborhoods, there was one glaring problem. The houses were expensive, more than Ken and Annie had saved up. Their wedding day was almost around the corner, and the two were finding it hard to divide their time between looking for a house and planning their wedding. It was then that Annie had a brilliant idea. She shared it with her fiancé, not knowing what kind of trouble they were about to step into. Annie heard from a friend that houses were being sold at auction. Many people were buying, renovating, and selling them. What if she and Ken bought one of these places and turned it into their dream home? By seeing how much resources they'd spent searching for houses, Ken agreed. He booked a place in the next auction and got ready to find his family a home. He had no idea what awaited him. The auction date came as expected, and Ken attended the event. He went through the catalog of houses on sale, seeing one among the many that he and Annie would love. The house was also salvageable, meaning the two wouldn't spend a fortune renovating it. Ken waited patiently for the house to be mentioned. This was his chance to shine. The auctioneer began the process. As soon as he touched on the house, Ken shot his hand up with his bid. He'd placed 10,000 euros on the building, hoping no one would outbid him. But as he held his price up, he realized something that made his stomach churn. It was then that he knew something was terribly wrong, but the mistake would be irreversible. No one else was bidding alongside Ken. That alone prompted him to look at the catalog. His eyes broadened as he realized his mistake. He had just bid on the wrong house, a 100-year-old derelict mansion in Dunoan, instead of the intended house in picturesque Glasgow. But he tried to cancel his bid. It was too late. Ken walked out of the auction drenched in sweat. He called Annie even before he made it outside, telling her what had happened in detail. He couldn't believe he'd just bid on the wrong house. He told her the reverse process on the auction would likely interrupt their wedding plans and the ceremony itself. But what did she want to do? Sensing the distress in her fiancé's voice, Annie assured him everything was okay. So if they had landed on a mansion instead of a house, then they would make it work. They had to. "We'll find a way to turn it into a home," she said over the phone, urging Ken not to worry about it. If only she knew the mess that awaited them in Dunoan. Ken and Annie got into their car the following morning and drove to Dunoan. The mansion in the picture didn't look that bad, but when the two saw it, they almost shed tears. The entire structure was run down. It had been empty for close to 40 years, but that was the least of Ken and Annie's problem with the place. The first issue Ken and Annie had with the mansion was its location. Their jobs, friends, and family were miles away from Dunoan. The area around the mansion was also covered in marshes and bogs. The couple also realized that the picture in the catalog was taken years before and from a flattering angle. But that wasn't all. Ken and Annie found out they'd only bought a third of the house, not the entire mansion. And not being the kind of couple to give up, they tracked down the other owners and bought the whole place. With the help of a professional, they took a tour of the mansion to map all the issues it had. The property was so bad that even Annie's dad, a retired architect, was quiet for weeks. Still, the two didn't give up on it. They hunkered down and began the renovation process. Ken and Annie began renovating the place. They discovered that the house had started sinking into the ground and had to redo the entire foundation to stabilize it. By the end, they had spent a lot of money on the renovations, but the mansion was more than perfect, a large house with several rooms, a study, and a large courtyard, somewhere they could call home. It is a testament to what sacrifice, determination, and hard work can do